Joining us now to discuss the cultural impact of the work of legend Louise Bennett Coverley, we know her as Miss Lou. We commemorate her anniversary of her birth today. Cultural and gender activist Professor Opal Palmer Adisa joins us. Good morning, Prof. Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Good morning, and I just want to start with Jamaican woman kunusa. Is how them general so. Look how long them liberated and the man them never know. It's the move.
I said I'm going to be sitting with Delia because she will take charge of this interview. But it's a question I ask, and when I ask a question like this, some people look at me like he's a madman. How good is Miss Lou?
Miss Lou is more than good. Miss Lou is phenomenal, and which is why Google recognized her last year. And even though we say a lot about Miss Lou, we need to recognize her in a much bigger way. Miss Lou is phenomenal. And I don't think, I think her work has been read on one level. And one of the things that I want to do when I'm promoting is reading Miss Lou on multiple levels. There is so much in her work to be plumbed, and there's so much important foundational work that she has done that has set us up for today, and enough is not being said about that.
What you mean by Miss Lou's work on multiple levels? What do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of times children and people in the festival, they do Miss Lou's poem in a kind of loud, brash way. And while I think that's one way of expressing it, I think Miss Lou was much more than that, that there are many more nuances and innuendos. So take, for instance, the first stanza of this poem I just read, Jamaican Woman. Last year, I did a thing at Edna Manley College, and one of the male students says to me, "But miss, maybe it's not a woman saying it, but a man." And that was for me so exciting because it gave us and the entire workshop an opportunity to look at the poem from a man saying this about Jamaican woman. And so this is what I'm saying, that Miss Lou's work is cannot be just read on one levels. It has a lot of innuendos, a lot of other kinds of references that sometimes we do not see or do not spend the time to explore fully. And that's just one aspect. We're not even looking at, what she did with the Nancy stories, what she did with the pantomime in terms of nationalizing the pantomime. Ring ding. An article I wrote is Miss Lou as an advocate for children, and not only because of Ring Ding, but when you begin to look at some of her poems, another one of her poems, which I love, is New Scholar. When you begin to look at that poem, you begin to understand how Miss Lou was setting up a different paradigm, that she was negotiating a relationship between parents and teachers, that she was saying that each child was individual and should be taught specifically to their needs, which is why Sarah Poole go to the teacher and say, "Morning teacher, I bring in my son," and she gives, this entire history about her child. And also advocated not to beat him if he's rude because he's soft and delicate, and if they beat another child or if they just knock the headboard, as she says, he starts to cry. So, again, we've not explored that aspect of Miss Lou. One, her doing Ring Ding for all those years that she did, I think 12 years, and then in her poetry to look at how she is, what is she saying about children and parent and teachers? All of that is in so much of her poetry. And I know that Delia has been and continues to do work on Miss Lou. So Delia has also investigated and found out some other things, right, Delia?
Absolutely. So one of the things when I'm listening to you, Doc, is I think it's how we ground the work, And you raised something very important in an article I read yesterday in the Gleaner about the fact that Miss Lou did a lot of social work, moving from home to home and understanding how we as Jamaican people not only use our language, but how we're socialized, our beliefs, our perceptions, which is very important to the work that she does. Do you feel that one of the things we need to do is to include Miss Lou on our curriculum in schools?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think Miss Lou is so valuable, and that when you look at her work, first of all, her work is a history, a chronology of that time period, and it would be wonderful to connect that time period to now. Right. One of the things that we haven't done yet in Jamaica, and we really need to, because we are such a global attraction is to, digitize, to technologize, our stories and our folklores and our riddles, because our children are being fed, are playing these games, and implicit in those games are subliminal messages and values, some of which are very counter to our very culture. So we need these young innovators. I was very happy to see that segment on that teachers, but we need that young innovation from our young people who are going back to these folklores and these stories that Miss Lou collected all throughout Jamaica, and modernizing them and making games of them, so that it's marketable for another audience, but also that our children become more familiar with our culture and the evolution, because culture is never just one thing. It is always evolving, and we see this in Miss Lou's work.
Yeah, one of the arguments I had with someone was her relevance to contemporary Jamaica. It's interesting you raised the interview and that poem about Sarah Poole, because I feel like if that teacher read how Sarah Poole introduced their own child and tried to get the teacher to understand the humanity of this little person, then the teacher who told Troy and did what she did wouldn't have done what she did either. So how relevant is she to our contemporary society and the ways in which we should develop as a nation?
One of the things that Muta Baruka says about Miss Lou's Dirty Tough poem is that Miss Lou was the first dub poet. And if it wasn't for Miss Lou, we wouldn't have had dub poetry. Because Miss Lou not only legitimized Jamaican nation language, she made it so that we're all now speaking it even on TV, which, Delia, I'm a little older, so that we couldn't speak like that on TV or anywhere in school when I went to we weren't allowed to use the Jamaican nation language, our mother tongue. So Miss Lou's relevance is still very much a part of us today, validating who we are. And that language is a means of communicating, and we have an amazing language that allows us to communicate. Again, bunununos. Now, how else can you say bunununos in any other language but Jamaican language? Lord, what a bunununos. So our language is rich and relevant and can be incorporated and stylized in a lot of ways. And this is also true of our culture. That too can happen with our culture. So I believe Miss Lou is still relevant today. Look how prophetic Miss Lou was in talking about independence and federation, right? These poems were written in the 50s, but Miss Lou understood the reparation movement that was to come. Mm-hmm. Hello, Miss Lou is very relevant today.
Yeah. Should she be named a national heroine?
Oh, absolutely. I've been advocating for that, and I hope that will happen soon. And I also want to put in a plug. We're doing this festival, and we need sponsorship for the festival. Miss Lou should have an annual festival. Other places in Florida and in Canada, they have annual festivals for Miss Lou. And last year, we did the Louis Bennett Coverley Festival Committee did the inaugural festival, which we again want to do this year. And we need people who love Miss Lou to step forward and sponsor it, make it happen. We have a lovely set of people, Lillian Allen, who's a Jamaican dub poet in Toronto and who is the poet laureate of Toronto, wants to come for the festival, and other important people, Fab Five and Meritone. We want together, all of us, to celebrate Miss Lou. And so, we invite people to come on board and make this an annual festival. Miss Lou should definitely be a national hero. She has certainly done the work, and she has certainly showcase Jamaica all over the world.
Yeah, this is a tough one, Prof. You may not have the answer, but sometimes I wonder, why is she not? Because persons like yourself, you've been advocating. I know there are others as well that have been saying she needs to be a hero. They had a whole thing online, a petition, but there still seems to be a resistance to recognizing her in that kind of way. Why do you think it's...
When I interviewed Miss Lou in '88, the resistance is the same resistance we have about nation language. The same resistance we have about saying our children are bilingual and should be taught to read and spell in the Jamaican language. And Joseph Ferguson of the Jamaican Language Unit at the university has just come out with a new Jamaican dictionary. So now we have the academic tool and the various apparatus to teach Jamaican as a nation language. So I think the resistance to Miss Lou is the resistance she felt. You know, when I interviewed her, she said, you know, people don't consider me a writer or a poet because I write in the Jamaican language. And I think that is still the resistance for her becoming a national hero. And we need to get over ourselves. We need to just really get over ourselves and understand the significance. Listen, there are 2 universities in the US that use Jamaica as a second language, and more places will be. People come in here to study the Jamaican language, you know, and we are like, come on, you know, we're still, oh, it's not this, it's not that. And Miss Lou again, you know, in the 50s, wrote a poem about nation language and why Jamaican patois is as valid as any other language and has all of the syntax and grammar that all languages have, and all languages are borrowed languages. So ours has some Twi because most of us came from Ghana. It has some French, it has some English, but it's a Twi language. Nobody else not touch it. You know, it reflects our culture, our ethos, our resilience, our love.
Yeah, when I think about how we also honor Harry Belafonte, and Miss Lou was very integral in his journey as well. Yeah. Prof?
Yeah, you know,
advocacy continues. We have to go.
Thanks for speaking with us. God bless you. God bless you and your family.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Miss Lou. Long time girl, me never see you.
Cultural and gender activist, Professor Opal Palmer Adisa.
All right, stick around. School's in session when we return.
So high, I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.